Cambrian fossils. Cambrian fossils were first recognized, as were really the whole business of study of fossils in geologic time, took place in England in the very late 18th century and then well into the 19th century. And essentially the English recognized that fossils are what they are. That is, they are the remains of life that lived in the geologic past, and that there was a geologic past. The Cambrian is named after Cambria, Wales. A number of geologists, Adam Sedgwick was one in the early 19th century, recognized that the fossils that are found in these bottommost layers of sedimentary rock that had fairly abundant fossils, not terribly abundant, lying on top of rock layers that didn't seem to have much of anything in them. At least at that time they didn't recognize them as having been bona fide fossils. And anyway, they gave it the name Cambrian after Cambria, Wales, on the sea cliffs of I guess the northern and eastern part of England. And they recognized a number of fossils, number of types of life that were strange. And one of the first ones were ones named Trilobites. And these were one of the most characteristic fossils found in these rocks that were named Cambrian. And they seem to be the oldest and most bottommost layer that had fossils in them. They didn't find much of anything underlying rocks named Cambrian, and this was the beginning of the geologic time scale. And it evolved gradually with rocks of different ages as they pieced it together piece by piece. But the Cambrian was one of the first periods, although it was a little more complicated than that because they used the term Silurian first, and later the term Cambrian was introduced. So it's not as straightforward as I'm presenting it here. Gradually documented the presence of a variety of life forms which were very strange, really, compared to life forms today. And trilobites were one of them. Once this was established in England, it spread quickly to other parts of Europe, particularly, and the United States and Canada. And they recognized in North America that there were similar fossils, which they also called Cambrian, because the fossils were very similar, and included a lot of trilobites, lots of trilobites. And that's another trilobite on the screen. There's quite a variety of Cambrian trilobites. In fact, the Cambrian is called the Age of Trilobites because they are the most abundant animals occurring in the rock record. Cambrian, part 2. The presence of trilobites were recognized early, and they were very, very nice. Trilobites are nice. They are nice. They're kind of cute, and might make, if they were around today, might make good pets. Recognized other things that were very strange and not like life of later geologic time or life that's living today. One of these were referred to as archaeocyathids. They look like sponges, but they were different. They were quite a bit different when you looked at them more carefully and more critically. They were strange, and there were other strange life forms. There were what are known as hyoliths, little bothersome invertebrates, essentially. The life that was recognized entirely at first in the Cambrian was that of invertebrates, animals without backbones. And they had started documenting more and more of these. they're still being documented. In fact, I've documented some of them from here in Missouri, from the southern Missouri, the Ozarks. Some invertebrates, they're mollusks, known as monoplacophorans, and another group of mollusks known as hemithicelids have been documented rather extensively in the Ozarks by yours truly. Anyway, that's the Cambrian. It is a period of geologic time in which the critters are really different from those of later geologic time and really different from those that are living today. All of the Cambrian life forms such as trilobites and archaeocyathids, hyalists, monoplacophorans are still living. They still exist. Hemithicelids essentially are kaput, and there's quite a variety of other invertebrate life characteristic of the Cambrian that at the end of the Cambrian goes extinct. And the Cambrian is recognized as the first part of geologic time that has fairly complex animal life occurring fairly abundantly. There are a few complex animal life fossils found in what are known as pre-Cambrian rocks. That is, they are older than, they are pre-Cambrian in age. That is, they're older than the Cambrian. And there are a few things that are what are known as organismic type of life forms, at least appear to be that way, and which ironically often get left out of the paleontological literature, because there are paleontologists that are very adamant of the fact, at least so they look at it, that there are no organismic fossils older than the Cambrian. And that's not totally true, at least that's according to yours truly. That's a debatable thing as far as the presence of organismic fossils prior to the Cambrian. But rocks and fossils prior and therefore older than the Cambrian are known as pre-Cambrian. That is, they predate the Cambrian. They're older than the Cambrian. And this is, in a way, a dilemma that is still not resolved in paleontology. It's a very interesting dilemma. Dilemmas are interesting anyway, but this is a particularly interesting dilemma. And it's problematic. It's still not really thoroughly decided as to what's going on with the Precambrian life. Is there really some organisms that are... Precambrian is problematic, and there is disagreement as to whether there's really bona fide organisms with organs, and that is specific parts that play a portion of the of animal life and constitute higher invertebrates and higher life forms, or whether the Precambrian is essentially totally very, very primitive life known as prokaryotes, life forms without a cell nucleus, and very, very primitive essentially. Anyway, here's some of the Cambrian fossils that are particularly characteristic. On the screen where you see these trilobites, these are really big trilobites. They come out of various areas in the connected with the Proto-Atlantic Ocean, essentially. And these big ones you see here are from Newfoundland, and these that you see here are from Morocco. And they're very distinctive trilobites known as Paradoxides. And then here's some trilobites from closer to home, from where I'm from. I'm from the St. Louis area. Southwest of the St. Louis area is a big area of Cambrian rocks. It makes up part of the Ozark Uplift. And these are trilobites from the Ozarks. and they're distinctive. They're compared to, say, the ones that I showed you from Morocco or the ones from Newfoundland. And the next trilobites you see are small ones that come from the Rocky Mountains and parts of Utah, parts of Idaho. Quite a rich fauna of Cambrian trilobites in that region. And then here's some trilobites that are very interesting because their soft parts have been preserved. These come from what is known as the Burgess Shale. And you may have, if you're into fossils at all, you may have heard about the Burgess Shale. It was discovered in the early part of the last century by a American geologist by the name of Charles Walcott, and preserves a variety of soft-bodied Cambrian life forms. Cambrian life forms that normally don't leave much of a fossil record because they're too soft and too squishy. And squishy things don't leave very good fossils in most cases. This is an exception. It's an occurrence in British Columbia that preserves squishy, soft-bodied Cambrian life forms of a considerable variety. Similar material has been found recently in China, and it also is soft-bodied, similar to the Burgess Shale. But these are characteristic Cambrian fossils that do not have hard parts. Most fossils to be preserved have to have hard parts, and that is the case with Cambrian for the most part. But in some cases, such as the Burgess Shale and the Xinjiang fauna of China, the fossils are actually preserved with the soft tissues. Essentially, it's very thin films of carbon, and if you turn them in the light, as you can see here, you get them in the right reflection, the fossils are quite obvious and quite nice, really. And anyway, this is Cambrian material. The soft-bodied Cambrian fossils are relatively rare once you get into younger rocks. There seems to be conditions that were conducive for preservation of these soft-bodied things like the Burgess Shale fossils that did not exist later in geologic time, or if they did exist, they were very, very rare. Cambrian period, one of my favorite periods of geologic time, because you see this massive change of life. You see transition from really very primitive life forms, often in the Precambrian, into higher invertebrate life forms such as trilobites, archaeocyathids. There's glaspids, number of arthropods characteristic of the Cambrian, and quite a variety of mollusks as well that are characteristic of the Cambrian also. Anyway, that's a little bit on the Cambrian period. Hope you enjoyed it.
Cambrian book?
Yeah, here's a book that I've written on the Cambrian period, and covers some of the material, quite a bit of the material that I've covered in this video, and covers quite a bit of the variety of Cambrian fossils. And there's probably maybe more than you want to know about the Cambrian period in here, but it is interesting. It's a very interesting period in geologic time. If it wasn't for the Cambrian, we probably wouldn't be here.
You can get it in a digital download or in a soft cover?
Okay. Yeah, you can get it in a digital download, or you can get it in a soft cover. And it is a very nice book. I'm not bragging, but it is nice.
Say, I'll leave you a link at the below. Say, I'll leave you a link below. Just
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll leave you a link below.
Okay.
And if you want to purchase it.
We're good.